So at this point, the sun moves on into gateway number 7. And there's a whole change in season here. And we'll see how that all takes place as we go through this particular hexagram and talk. So in the book of lines here, we have the pages, the wheel on the left, we have the commentary on the right, and the lines on the right. So let's have a look at the wheel. And here we are, gateway number 7, in the bottom right-hand corner there. We see, oh, goodness, the channel, the potential channel there is the 31 that we've just had the sun go through. That was the gateway of influence, and basically seeing, how we are influential in the world and what it is that we allow to influence us. Okay, so there, the 31 is the voice, the 7 is the laying out the program here of how things take place, how this, what we're going to see is this connection between the self center and the throat center, which is naturally a channel of leadership, right? So here we are, we're entering into a whole mode of leadership here. We've gone through this quarter we call civilization, where all kinds of plans and ideas and thoughts and things were expressed, suggestions. And now we're just going to see what happens in the next round when we get into gateway number 7. So in the traditional I Ching, the 7 is called the army, A-R-M-Y, left, right, left, right, left, right. Okay? So very, very important thing to understand at these times. The army is made up of soldiers or warriors, right? Huge difference between somebody that literally just is so brainwashed, they just follow whatever command or rule system or whatever it is they're given. And those that, what can I say, think for themselves, sense out what their own story is, what their own involvement is as the warrior. So in this time, particularly, we're seeing classic examples of this. We're just going for a little military exercise in the Ukraine. And so, left, right, off we go. And the resulting chaos of that in so many different ways. And then you see the opposite side of that, the people that actually think for themselves and work things out for themselves and deal with situations according to their own way of doing things. So it's a very important thing to understand this thing about the army, or, being railroaded into things just because the whole sensation of life is, well, I'd just better do what I'm told. I'd better follow the rule systems here. So I've chosen to call gateway number 7, I call it uniformity. You can get the sense of the army, we're going to do this is our mission, this is what we're going to undertake. But uniformity is about people being able to find common intent, like draw common intent from the people around you. How do I make it worth somebody's while? How do I get their attention on aiming something in a very particular way? Moving forward in life, right? It's part of what we call the logic circuitry. Logic is always looking towards the future. Moving forward in life is made possible through establishing common consent, right? We're all in this together. We're all on board with this thing. And promoting shared, keyword with anything in the logic circuitry, shared interests among those involved, right? Are we all agreeing with this, that we're going to apply ourselves to move forward in this way? Can we find this uniformity? And so what comes from that is a very simple expression, in a logical progression. Autocracy, the strong guy, the despot, eventually gives way to democracy. Right? Democracy where everybody has input. And democracy ultimately leads to meritocracy. And we'll watch this taking place in the world. Yes, there's a big muddle around it all. But democracy is a staging post for meritocracy. Meritocracy is where people rule because they're trained to do that. Democracy is made up of all kinds of people that we would describe as civil servants, right? But somehow or other, it's all morphed into something very, very different. Somehow or other a civil servant gets the front page in the news and all the politics is so exciting or made to be exciting, where in actual fact these people are just civil servants. They're here to serve society. And so when meritocracy comes about, right, we see that people act responsibly. They're not just following a party line. They're just not following an autocrat, that they're moving towards things that we see holds common interest. All right. So let's have a look into the lines. Seventh gateway, how do we find ways in which people combine their intentions towards the future? And the first line is called discipline. There's got to be a discipline, whether it's self-discipline, whether it's discipline amongst those that are involved. We all have a common intent here. Effective coordination relies on the quality of shared commitments. There's just that thing of when we subscribe to something, do we really feel like we're involved? Is our consent in agreement with what it is that's going forward? Can we find that uniformity of purpose? So good leadership is achieved through establishing order by making intentions clear. Right? So we'll see this in the changing of the seasons, all kinds of things shifting in the world, whether we see it politically or personally or whatever. All kinds of things are changing. And it's basically on the clarity of the commitment. Are we at this particular time going to do something about the climate chaos? Or is it already too late? Are we going to do something about fixing aggression and aggrievements in war and in gender disputes and in all kinds of things like that? So good leadership, clear intentions. All right? So the Venus energy of it, you promote coordination and cooperation by launching a friendly yet disciplined course, right? Friendly, everybody feels like they're involved. Yes, I can go along with this. This actually relates to the way I see of this, whatever it is we're proposing here, moving forward in a constructive way. And then the other side of it, the Mercury side of it, being easily distracted causes you to lose touch with the real needs of any situation. I mean, you've got to see, anytime we set a plan in motion or we outline a course, everybody on board with this thing, oh, but I got this, I got that, I got the other. And by the time, the things are in motion, everybody's off in different directions. So it is that discipline. Can we all agree? Can we all have consensus here before moving forward? And that is the baseline. That is the first line of the hexagram, of the seventh hexagram. Right? First lines always give the foundation. Discipline, eye on the ball, focus, be clear, clear communication, clear intentions. We get to the second line. The second line's, I won't say spaced out, but the second line is always in a state of natural approach of things. Right? What's the natural way of getting people on board and finding that consensus? And so we have this line called equanimity. Rewards come from implementing any natural advantage. Right? They say about water, it always finds the easiest pathway downhill. Second lines, they have this natural way of seeing how can this directing this consensus, what's the easiest way of making it all happen? So implementing any natural advantage. Oh, we got an advantage over here, let's go this way. So your leadership endures through aligning with or taking advantage of those being led. Now, it's very easy to kind of bypass everybody else's interest and, oh, well, I'll just go along with my own self-interest here. So let's see. The Neptune side of it being naturally inspirational, you give reassurance to those seeking leadership. Right? Second lines just have this natural quality about them. They can be very inspirational. Let's do this. Here's the easy way to go about it. The other side of it, when it's a slightly more overthought, you have a potential, once elected, to indulge your self-interest before all other issues. And we can see this kind of performance going on all around the world. It's like people get put into a place of authority, they get elected in, and then they do whatever they feel like, or they just follow along the party lines and cruise and find themselves being thoroughly paid for it and lots of attention around it all. And in actual fact, they're not really performing a service except to themselves. Third line, right? Third line's always this possibility of, am I going to commit to this or not? Do we need consensus or not? Shall I get involved here or not? And this line, we call it disorder, a reluctance to acknowledge or be drawn into hierarchies of any sort. So we know in an army or in this thing of committees and uniformity, there's always going to be pecking orders, right? Who's the top dog? Who do we pay obeisance to? And all that kind of carry on. And so the third line can have a slightly disruptive effect. Oh, you expect me to do this? Really? Oh, yeah, watch me. I'm going to do the opposite. And, there's a classic instance of this with human design. This was one of the gates and lines that Ra had in his design. He was literally given this job of introducing human design to the world. And I watched him and traveled with him in many situations and just watched him trying to pull the thing together, trying to put out this absolutely outrageously new, unproven system into the world. And everybody had all kinds of great expectations about how he was going to do it. And it wasn't until quite a way on when it became very evident that human design works. It's accurate. It's spot on, in fact. And then he kind of said, all right, we need to make some kind of consensus around this, some kind of business around this. But he handed it off to people that had much more of a business side than himself. And then he watched them put this whole organization together, got to be like this, got to, here are all the rule systems of how to work with human design. These are the things you're going to say. And then he realized, oh my goodness, I've set up something that's more like a religion than anything else. And that's going to work in its way. But in the meantime, I'm just going to give every single thing that comes through me for free. And so human design, you'll find a lot of the information is railroaded through a particular construct of educational systems and stuff. But there's also this massive amount of information that he put out on his own behalf. Anyway, a reluctance to acknowledge or be drawn into hierarchies of any sort. He got the thing on the road and then he expanded it as much as he could. To find order in chaos through playing many, often separating and divergent roles. Right? This is the nature of the 7 to the 3rd line. Commitment or not, no fixed path. There's always a possibility of a tangent or moving away from it altogether. You play many varying roles without ever necessarily finding a consistent one. Right? So the 7 line 3, this whole thing of how we're going to get consensus here. Well, here's this opening of maybe there's more than one way to do this. Maybe there's all kinds of ways in which this can happen. Maybe I can be the warrior or, not necessarily attached to the regimentation of things. And here Mercury gives it, you can make up many reasons to avoid commitment by undermining the purpose in anything, that you literally keep pulling the foundations out of everything that gets started. And we will watch this, when the sun goes into the 7 line 3, all kinds of structures and things that we thought were all organized and were set in place are all going to start coming unglued. Then we come to the 4th line. Right, so remember between the 3rd and the 4th line in the helix, in the gene, there's a twist. So the 4th line kind of echoes what's going on in the foundation, but it's not necessarily getting the support from the 3rd line. It's not necessarily getting that continuity from the 3rd line. And the 4th line is a very interesting one. It's called disengaging. Leadership in the highest integrity knows when and how to withdraw. So we say about 4th lines, it loves consensus. It loves when everybody's on board. We are all in this together. But with this line, it's basically seeing, I'm not getting the consensus. So for example, as a coach, you're finding that your client is not doing their homework. Yes, they want to work with you, it seems like, but it's like pushing a rock up the hill. They're not taking the necessary steps. And so the 4th line says, look, it's fine. Go work with somebody else. Go be somewhere else. I don't have to take you on as a client. And the same thing expands also into our lives. We don't have to go along with a pathway or a situation or a dogma or anything else that's been prescribed to us. We can all of a sudden say, I don't buy into this stuff anymore. This just doesn't work for me. I'm going to go off and find the people and situations that really do work for me. It's a fascinating concept at this particular moment in time where a lot of the dogmas and creeds and political outsets and stuff, they're so extreme and radical. Judgments coming from a Supreme Court that is heavily loaded with Catholic members, that have their law system, they have their creed system. So a lot of things are shifting in this particular moment. And the fourth line really shows what's going on here. You are either realistic or not in how your leadership can serve others best. Realistic or not? Am I putting things forward for the overall benefit and consensus for everybody moving forward? Your strength in leadership is in identifying situations where it is best to withdraw. I'm not buying into this. I'm not subscribing to it. I'm not going along with this. Right? I just recognize it. The thing's out of tune with me. That's the 7 with the 4th line. And then Uranus gives it a very, very particular flavor. Your unwillingness to ever stop advancing will lead eventually to you being abandoned. And this is really a watchword for the dogmatic situations that are set up in the world at the moment. Sooner or later, dogma has to come unglued. We cannot stay on a railroad track that's not going anywhere. At least it's not taking us into a future. So this whole thing around climate change, for example, something that was obvious to me 50 years ago, is now all of a sudden, oh, really, this thing's actually happening now. What are we going to do about it? Then we move on to the 5th line. And 5th lines always have this position of potentially being the leader or the guide or the overseer. They have a vantage point they can view. And I call this line directing, the confidence and ability to instruct others in the needs of the moment. Very key words there. What are the needs in this moment? Yes, I'm looking into the future. Yes, I'm looking down the road. Yes, I'm seeing how things can come together. But what is the instruction needed for this particular moment in time? As the overall commander, and anyone that's got this 7 with the 5th line in their chart, you'll know everybody sooner or later looks to you to get instruction and guidance. What do you see? What's coming up here? As the overall commander, your clear communication in word and deed is essential. Walk your talk, make it clear what you're outlining and suggesting. None of this pie in the sky stuff. Oh, it'd be so great if, which is a classic thing with 5th lines, right? It's about practicality. What's the reality here? And so with the Venus side of it, you have the capacity to attract and sustain loyalty by honoring those being led. I guess we all know the difference between people that are very good at providing leadership and those that are not. 5th lines have to be really careful. They're in a projection field, and there is a projection field about who's really taking us where we need to go. And, I think all of us at one time or another, we put trust in somebody and then found out they didn't really know what they were up to. They may have made a lot of noise. It may have looked good at the time, but it didn't take us where we needed to go. On the other side of it, you become isolated and ineffective when you fail to focus on real and present needs, right? Real and present needs. That's the whole issue around going forward and giving the leadership forward. We often say about 5th lines, they can move into this space of rescuing because they have this pressure from outside. You must do this, you're supposed to do that. And so clear communication, clear intent, and the consensus comes, and honoring those being led, recognizing those. We'll see all the great leaders over time, they've had this natural respect from the people they've been leading. And then we come to the 6th line, the line we call meritocracy. 6 lines, they have this overall view. And when we get to the 6th line, we'll just see what is the best way forward for humanity. It's really a meritocracy where people are being responsible because they are informed and clear in what it is they're doing and what it is they're proposing and how they're going about it. Assigning responsibility and guidance to those who merit it. Right? It's in a sense, it's about voting or putting our energy behind people that actually receive merit. Not just because they've got great dogmas and great concepts and principles and stuff. It's just we actually recognize they're on a track that's taking us into an assured future. You remain flexible in using resources well, or become unwilling to lose personal control. And the personal control is, well, I can see better than everybody else. I'll just kind of manipulate things the way I can, right? Or remain flexible in just seeing, how does this all play out to the greatest benefit? Mercury gives it a flavor. You communicate responsibility in ways that everyone feels included and uplifted. You know, if you ever played on a team, wasn't it great, that everybody just got on together? We're all going about this in the same way. We're all in support and engagement with each other. And great when we congratulate each other and, give each other guidance when it's needed. Right? So communicating responsibility so everybody feels honored and included. Yeah. The other side of it, if you ever communicate responsibility as blame, oh, you really screwed up. Oh God, I was really trying to do something different and look what you've done now. You'll upset the common intent, right? That sense of, oh, we put our best foot forward, but somehow or other there was a breakdown in how it all took place. And now the sixth line is remonstrating and just saying, could have done better. You should have done it a different way. So very, very careful about that seven, how the communication is relayed into the common interest. So just a couple of things here. We started out this particular series on midsummer or midwinter in the Southern Hemisphere, hexagram number 15, right? That's the yellow marking at the bottom of the wheel there. And the hexagram chop marks underneath it, where we have a broken, and then a solid line. That's the bottom, what we call trigram, the first three lines there, broken, solid. Right, and what happens and then we went through every combination with that as the foundation, the broken, solid. We went through all 8 variations of the top 3 chop marks by the time we got to gateway number 33. And now we're having a change of season. We're going into number 7, and the bottom 3 are going to be broken, solid, broken. Right, so the first lot, this broken, solid with the 15 was mountain, stillness. So everything we've gone through so far has been equating to that quality of stillness. And now the broken, solid, broken is the markings of calm and water. So very, very different flavor, very different energy that we're moving into. The wheel of the hexagrams is absolutely fascinating to look at. But let me just add one more thing here. In the middle of the human design chart, there is this diamond center, the self center. Right, and there are 8 gateways in that self center. And these 8 gateways are marked like these yellow spokes in the wheel here. Right, they're all at an exact distance from each other. And you'll see the letters and the writings that are put there. We've been in Litha. This is the pagan name, or one of the language names from the pagan rites in gate 15. And we're moving into Lamas or Laganas. I can't really say that word, but it's basically, there's a whole change in season. And pagan rites or pagan festivals have known about this stuff forever. And so I'm not saying become a pagan or, get totally carried away with that, but just to see there's a natural change of season here. And it can be so easy if we're living in cities or we're living underground somewhere. We don't even see the shifts that's going on around us. But energetically, nature is always moving on. So just a real change of season coming up as the sun goes into gateway number 7 now, and we see we've gone through civilization, we've gone through this whole thing of expressing concepts, ideas, stories, beliefs. What are we going to do about it? And so the 7 is, right, let's pull it together and see what happens going forward. Right, let's find the consensus, the conformity, the uniformity for the next stage. All right, so we'll catch up next time. We'll look into gateway number 4 and the next one, and have a good time in gateway number 7, sun in gateway number